I shifted 2 sentences and it went from a flop to generating over $50 million. Not only did it make it one of the most successful campaigns of my life, up until that point, it shifted my life forever. You know, in this world, we are all fighting for eyeballs. If you're in business, we are fighting for attention. We're fighting for eyeballs. We're fighting for clicks. And what is the most unfair advantage you could have to get somebody to say, hey, I'm interested? Kind of, you know, I picture people are online scrolling like, yeah. What makes you stand out? What makes you become the stop sign, the grabber, the red shirt in a sea of black shirts, the uniqueness? Because if you don't get someone to stop, you can't serve them. If you don't hook them to say, I want more information about your product, your service, and what you do, then they just scroll by you and they're on the next piece. And if you just talk about your story, your epiphany, your hero's journey, or how great your product is, they never hear it because they're on to the next thing. And this journey started for me 27 years ago. I did my first infomercial. I did it because I watched Tony Robbins on an infomercial. It changed my life. I bought Personal Power. And I was like, I need to do this. I need to sell my information for a living. And I decided to teach people how they could make money with cars. I know it sounds crazy, and I did my first infomercial for it. And what I learned that makes it so unique in this infomercial journey, and if you ask why infomercials, because the internet didn't exist 27 years ago, and it was the only way to get in front of people. A lot more costly than what people have to do in today's world. So it taught me different lessons. Right? Each test could be $50,000 when I didn't have it. So I had to be methodical. I had to find a way to get people to stop. And where this journey came from, and what I'm going to give you today, is my biggest secret. I'm going to give you the 2 sentences that truly proven, documented, generated over $50 million, and also put me on course to where my brand is heading towards $2 billion in revenue and sales since I started. I don't say that to brag. I show you what's possible when you understand how to get people to stop and see what you have. And this has been an obsession of mine. I'm in a phase of my life, I get to partner with Tony Robbins and amazing people like Matthew McConaughey. We just did an event with him last year that brought in 2.5 million people on day 1. And for doing this for 27 years and doing 11 events in a row now that average about 1 million people each at the events signed up, I'd have to know what I'm doing or just be a fool for not acknowledging it. And the secret is really getting people to stop. If they don't stop, they don't know you exist. Your marketing dollars are just wasted. And now I want to take you back, after that little rant, I want to take you back onto how this became an obsession, because when I started in infomercials, I used to picture that a busy mom would come home and she'd have, you know, a baby under one arm. She just got done working. She's trying to get dinner made. She's got the remote sitting on the counter, and I pop up in an infomercial. And I have to be so persuasive, and I used to think 3 minutes. We don't have 3 minutes anymore. But I used to think I have 3 minutes for that mom to put down the spatula, have the baby go play with something else, and sit and watch me for a 30-minute infomercial. And when you're broke, and your back's against the wall, and you took every dollar that you have to invest in this business that my sister told me I was crazy, my parents told me I was nuts, I had friends stop talking to me, telling me I'm a dreamer, that I'm supposed to be a blue-collar guy, I didn't go to college, how the hell are you going to do that? Believe me, those thoughts were in my head too. We all had that imposter syndrome living in us. I had all those thoughts too, but I had to make this work. And once I burnt the bridges, once I built the infomercial, once I built the product, I was in, a couple $100,000, half of it borrowed in. I had to make it work. Sometimes the biggest breakthroughs are when your back's against the wall and when you have nothing to lose. When you burn the boats, I kind of burnt the boats. But my whole goal of this infomercial is, how do I say something, do something so strong that a mom who's busy, get done with work, trying to manage her kids, manage the kitchen, puts everything down and watches me. And that's how I obsessed on what I call the hook, the stop sign, the grabber, to get someone to say, this is worth it. Because once you get their attention and their arms come unfolded, then you get the opportunity to tell your epiphany, tell your story, tell your transformation, share why this product, why now, why them, why you. But you don't get it unless they stop. So years later, you know, I start in the infomercial business. I have to make it work. I have ebbs and flows. It works, it doesn't work. I finally get momentum, it's growing. I do an infomercial teaching people how I made money in real estate, and we went on to build one of the biggest real estate education brands in the world. that was 15 years in the making, 12 years in the making. And in the meantime, Tony Robbins and I, the guy who got me started in this, we become dear friends. And we're just dear friends for about 5 years. And then we decided it was time to do something together. And we said, why not teach people what we do? How to take your life experience, your skills, your knowledge, your passion, your expertise, and turn it into a product to help other people go faster. Hence the knowledge industry. And we started a company called Mastermind.com. You might have seen it. We've just done 11 events in a row, averaging about 1 million people registered per event. And Mastermind has it's been this passion project that's turned into a monster, transforming lives all over the world, teaching people how to do this. Long story short, though, as I start building the self-education training company, the knowledge business training company, and the software and the AI and the tools and all those pieces, I look back and said, hey, people are going to pay us, and we have one of the highest level masterminds in the world, all the way up to $250,000, right? People could start with $47 or $250,000. We help people no matter where they are in the journey. Like, if someone is going to pay that much to learn how we've done so well for all these years, I better find a framework. I better find how I turned 2 sentences into $50 million and more, how we get people to stop. So I want to give you some things to think about as you start crafting this hook. Let's just call it a hook. You might not love that word. Call it a stop sign. Call it a grabber. Call it the thing that gets people to listen to your product, your service. You can't serve them unless they stop. And I want to share with you why and how this just hit me the hardest ever with this right here. A hook is something that lands in your soul so hard that you got to hear more. You should know the dreams and goals of your ideal client better than anyone else. What problem do you solve? How can you get them to their goal faster? What service, what product, what do you provide that allows them to go there? But what are the dreams they have, the goals they have? Some people might just want to play piano quicker, or get their roof fixed, or launch a course, or become a coach, or write a book, or launch a podcast, or take your business to a whole nother level. So you should know your ideal client's dreams, goals, and desires better than anyone else. On the opposite side, you should also know their fears, their worries, the thing they're scared of the most. What stresses them out if it doesn't work? What do they need to do? What if they leave their life the way it is? You should know that, and your team or you could find that by going to Facebook groups or a group on a community online that finds your ideal people and live with them. I heard a marketer say one time, if you want to sell people that ride the bus to work every day and you want to sell them something that helps their life, then ride the bus with them and hear what they're saying. I would say you should know their goals, dreams, and desires, and you should also know their fears and worries more than anyone else. When you do, you start getting the essence of what a hook is. You know, a lot of times if you're in the knowledge industry like Tony and I are, your ideal client is just you of a few years ago. What were your worries? What were your dreams? Make sure you're speaking to that. I love the thought of living inside the mind of your prospect. Finish their sentences. What discussions are they having that you could just pick up on? People buy from you when they feel understood, not just when they understand you. Sometimes you watch a speaker, you watch a presenter, you're like, oh, he's cool, she's cool, but he didn't write anything down. Then you watch someone else and go, oh my gosh, they must be reading my journal. They know the way I feel. They've been exactly where I'm at. We can catch that essence in a short period of time when you understand this about your client. What are some of the headlines? What are the things in the news that they might be worried about? Could you incorporate that? You see, really a hook is meeting people where they are. And if you think about it, why do people make decisions? They either are trying to move away from something uncomfortable, or they want to move towards something that can enhance their life, right? We're either moving away from something or towards something. And sometimes, like if I want to move away from being broke, when I'm done with that, then I want to move towards being wealthy. But I'm in one of those processes, right? If I want to move away from a bad relationship, I want to move towards a good one. If I want to move away from being overweight, I want to move towards being in the best shape of my life. If I want to move away from a career that's unsettling and doesn't satisfy me and it makes me dread each day, I want to move away from that pain. How do I do? I want to move towards doing my own thing. What's the best way to get there, right? So I don't mean to oversimplify it, but you need to know what your tribe, your future client, what do they want to move away from? The stick. And what do they want to move towards? The carrot. And these things have to be incorporated into this hook that you could say with a couple of sentences. My favorite quote in the whole world, well, one of my favorite quotes from Mark Twain is, if I would have had more time, I would have written you a shorter letter. When you take those 4 or 5 buckets and you bring those together, then you start fine-tuning. You use AI in today's world to help you fine-tune it and craft that message down that you could be speaking to the people that are moving away from pain and the people that are moving towards pain. You're meeting them where they are. They feel understood. They know your desires. They know your dreams. They know what you're worried about, all in 2 sentences. When you hit that magic, everything will change in your business. So I got to give you the story that we started with on how 2 sentences equaled, and it was over $50 million. I just know for a fact it was that. It could be closer to 100, but I know for a fact it was $50 million plus. And I got to give you a little background on this so you really understand it. Being in infomercials, I've done this a long time. Of course, we went over and now we do amazing, I think we're one of the leaders online and doing this better than most. And we've been doing it the longest. Tony and I, if we don't do it better than most, we should quit by now, right? But when it was infomercials, one of the biggest breakthroughs I had that took my income, my impact, my exposure to a whole nother level was Larry King. Now, some of you younger, you might not know who Larry King is. You can Google him. But Larry King did interviews on CNN and other stations, but he did it for 72 years. Could you think of doing something for 72 freaking years? I always joke his first interview was Jesus, and then he moved on. No, but this is a guy that interviewed every president, every major star, all the way from Madonna and Michael Jackson and everybody else, and every president from Ronald Reagan and Carter and Bush and Clinton and all of them, right? So one day I'm watching a Larry King. Now I already have an infomercial. I'm already selling online, selling on TV. Online, probably wasn't popular yet. And I'm watching Larry King interview Joel Osteen, the pastor out of Houston, Texas. If you're not in the States, maybe you don't know who he is, but he's a big-time Christian pastor here in the States. He's interviewing about his new book. And Larry King said something pretty provocative. He said, hey, I'm Jewish, not Christian. I don't believe Jesus is the Son of God. Am I going to hell? And I remember thinking, oh my God, that's a question that's going to be like, how do you answer that, right? But I remember something hit me at that point is Joel gave a great answer. I'm not God. I'm not going to make that decision. And then they went back and forth, had a good rapport. But I was intrigued by his book at that very moment. But at the time, to get a book, I had to get my butt in the car. There was no Amazon yet. I had to get my butt in the car and drive to a Borders or a Barnes & Noble to pick up this book. It was so complex. I never got the book. But in that moment of watching Larry King, I said, imagine if at that time, Larry King just held up the book and said, hey, if you like this guy's book, Joel's book, call the number on the screen or go to the website on the screen and you can get the book directly from me. This epiphany, I was like, oh my gosh, I'm going to do a show about my book. It was my book on how to invest in real estate. I'm going to do a show like Larry King that does just that. No one had ever sold a book on an infomercial before, ever. I'm like, I'm doing this. So I hire a host and I say, hey, I want you to treat me like you're Larry King. Try to prove me wrong. I bought the Larry King microphone. He had this microphone, it had the brand on it. So I got the Larry King microphone. We set up a studio. We filmed this infomercial and we talked about why real estate and why now and why them and why it should be a great thing for you to do and about the book. And every once in a while, all I did was hold up the book and say, hey, instead of going to the bookstore, you can call the number below and get the book at the best discount anywhere instead of the bookstore. That went on to be one of the biggest campaigns up until that date. It helped be a part of selling almost 1 million copies of that book. So now, park that. Larry King changes my life. He doesn't know it. Fast forward 10 or 12 years, I'm at dinner with Larry King because of a mutual friend. He is so intriguing. He's telling so many incredible stories. So I tell him the story of what he did for my life, and he didn't know it. And he looked at me and said, Well, am I too old to do an infomercial with you now? I was out of my mind excited, except I hadn't done an infomercial in a couple of years. I was on to doing it online. But I'm like, I'm not going to pass up doing an infomercial with the Larry King and let him interview me. So I said, hell yes. We made up a great deal. I gave him a royalty on every book that we were going to sell. And we got the old desk out, we got the old setup out, and we filmed an infomercial with Larry King. But I got to tell you something. I was so stoked. I had one of the top infomercials on TV for years. With Larry King, how could it go wrong? So I geek out and I study what Larry King typically does in the opens of all his shows over decades. And he would start with, tonight on Larry King, I'm here with Madonna. She's a multiple platinum this and she's that. Tonight, I'm here with Ronald Reagan, President of the United States. And I got this cadence and I started getting in my head going, Larry King's gonna interview me. This is gonna be amazing. And I write this open, tonight, I'm here with Dean Graziosi. And I brag about me. Well, we go on after the open. It's the only thing I wrote. And then we had this amazing dialogue. I loved the show. I was so excited. I said, Larry, we got a winner here. I can't wait to tell you. We put the show out. We get it ready. We get it edited. We get everything designed. And we put it out. And guess what? A flop. It's dead. It's not working. I look at it. I'm like, oh, my gosh. I'm embarrassed to call Larry King and tell him, sorry, all the hype I told you how good I was at this, it tanked. So I look at it, I'm like, what is wrong with this? And I start thinking, it was about my book, Millionaire Success Habits. When I first wrote it, I'm like, is it the book? You just get in your head and you forget all the things I learned over all these years of doing this bigger and faster than most and obsessing on it every day of my life. I'm like, is it the book? Is it the price? Is it the website? Is it the interview? And Larry King's been retired for a while. Maybe people don't remember Larry. And I'm looking at all of it and it hit me. The thing that transformed my life, the thing I obsessed on doing infomercials and obsessed on now is I missed the hook. I missed the first two sentences. I made the first two sentences about me. No one cares about me. They care about them. They care about the end result. Why should I uncross my arms and listen to you? Why should I do that? And it just hit me like, oh my gosh, what a fool I am. Maybe it was my ego, maybe because I was working with Larry. And I said, Larry, I need to change two sentences. I called him up. I said, can I send a private plane to pick you up? Can you put on the same clothes you have? And can you fly here and just change two sentences? He said, you think it'll make a difference? I said, I don't know, but I truly believe so. In fact, I want to show you this. I want to show you the first Larry King open.
Today, we're in the company of a phenomenal success story. Dean Graziosi is a multimillionaire, New York Times best-selling author, and a world-renowned business superstar, father of two. What's even more remarkable is Dean grew up in a dysfunctional home, lived in a trailer park, and barely got out of high school.
Okay, that was the actual footage of, I don't know how many years ago it was, a long time ago. That was the actual footage. That was the open of the Larry King show. If you see the Larry King microphone, we compromised on the back, and it just tanked. And when I looked at it, again, it was about me. Dean Graziosi is this, and a multimillionaire, and a good father. And all. Who is Dean Graziosi, and why the heck? There's so many things on TV. Remember the mom I used to think about? She's not putting down the remote, not putting down the kid, not stopping dinner to watch me. She's like, this is all about him. And then I had Larry King fly in and redo it. And this was the second take, two sentences. Go ahead and play that.
Tonight, I want to ask you a very tough question. Have you ever in your adult life looked in the mirror and thought, you know, I really figured that my life would have turned out better? If so, you are not alone.
That change made it about you. It made it about them. Let me ask you, have you ever looked in the mirror in your adult life and thought to yourself, I thought I'd be further ahead by now? Of course you have, me too. And when we changed that sentence, flew in, changed the sentence, that show went on to produce over $50 million in revenue. Why? Because I entered conversations going on in their head. I entered about their worries. I entered their dreams. All the things I told you earlier, I hit. And then it gave me permission, it gave them permission to stay and watch the rest of it and get my book. And that's what I want you to think about, because I didn't change the price of the book. I didn't change the name of the book. I didn't change how many pages were in the book. I didn't change the website, didn't change the phone number. I didn't change the entire infomercial. It's a half-hour show. I changed 2 sentences. So let me ask you, where are you missing out on your hook? Where are you missing out on the grabber? Where are you missing out on the stop sign so people actually stop and listen to what you have to say so they can get your product or service? Look at what you're missing. Start crafting the 4 things, the 5 things I shared earlier. Think about what I just shared there. Watch it again. Make your own hook. Add it to the front of your marketing. Watch things change.